Here's why Tokyo Olympics became the most expensive summer games ever. According to a wide-ranging analysis, the Tokyo Olympics are already the costliest summer games on record, with expenses expected to rise further. With the epidemic contributing to increasing economic losses, the Tokyo Olympics are on course to be the most costly Summer Olympics ever. We're going to find out in today's video, where we discuss here's why Tokyo Olympics became the most expensive summer games ever. But before we go on with our video, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for new and spicy videos. Now, let's get going. Cost of Tokyo Olympics. As prices continue to climb, the Tokyo Olympics this summer might cost Japan billions of dollars. The anticipated expenses of staging the delayed 2020 Tokyo Olympics, which include stadium improvements, athlete lodgings, and event promotion, total moreover $20 billion, making it one of the most costly games in history. However, it does not win the gold. According to study, the 2014 Winter Olympics in Sochi were the costliest, followed by this year's Summer Olympics in Tokyo. Of course, the overall cost of the Games for this year is only a guess. It's crucial to remember that the prices stated below are sports-related costs for the Olympics. These expenses include stadium building, ceremonies, and other operational expenses such as labor and food. OCOG. The Organizing Committee for the Olympic Games, OCOG, does not include non-sports-related activities in its official budget. Construction of roads, trains, airport infrastructure, and hotel modifications are among the non-OCOG indirect costs associated with the Games' staging. And while these costs typically outweigh the Games' official sports-related expenses, the advantages can be seen years later. For instance, the sports-related expenditures of the 2008 Beijing Olympics were $6.8 billion, while China's overall investment was about $42 billion, owing to outside charges. From a $3 billion airport terminal to $30 million spent on plants and flowers, the expenditures were diverse. Indeed, it took decades for Montreal to repay the money borrowed to build an Olympic stadium for the 1976 Games, which became known as the Big O. Furthermore, the expense of the 2004 Athens Olympics have been linked to Greece's debt problem. OCOG budgeting. The OCOG has planned $6.7 billion in income for the Tokyo Games, which is far less than the predicted $20 billion in expenses. Even though hundreds of instances of COVID-19 have infected some athletes and dozens of Games-related employees, the Tokyo Olympics officially begin on Friday. The International Olympic Committee, on the other hand, would have to repay roughly $4 billion to its television partners if the Olympic Games were canceled. Revenue projection. According to the Wall Street Journal, the expense for the Tokyo Olympics soared above $20 billion when the Games were postponed a year ago. Billion-dollar stadium upgrades, Olympic Village development, and event promotion are just a few of the expenditures. This $20 billion expenditure might be offset by income from the Games, but revenue will be lower than expected because fans will no longer be present at the Tokyo Games. The Organizing Committee of the Olympic Games, OCOG, would lose at least $800 million in ticket sales due to empty venues. However, tickets are only a small part of the problem with Tokyo's empty stadiums. Visitors to Japan for the Games would have spent approximately $2 billion on meals, transportation, lodgings, and goods, according to local organizers. The OCOG anticipated $6.7 billion in income for the Tokyo Games, considerably less than its estimated expenses, although that estimate included money from ticket sales. Sponsorships and television income will continue to support the Tokyo Olympics, but the total financial picture is uncertain owing to the epidemic. According to the Council on Foreign Relations, an independent, nonpartisan organization, many Olympic Games are not lucrative for the host city. For example, the 2008 Beijing Olympics brought in $3.6 billion in income, but cost the host city more than $40 billion, while the 2012 Summer Olympics in London brought in $5.2 billion in revenue, but cost the city $18 billion. Many governments and host towns will argue that, despite the Games' budget shortages, holding the Olympics boosts the economy for years by generating employment and promoting tourism. These indicators are more difficult to quantify, although numerous studies have shown that employment and tourist claims are more ambiguous. Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga remarked, "The globe is facing enormous problems. We can bring success to the delivery of the games," he continued. The IOC would have to repay roughly $4 billion to its television partners if the Olympic Games were canceled. The current budget for Tokyo 2020 was disclosed in December at 1.64 trillion yen, $15.8 billion, up 294 billion yen, $2.8 billion, due to expenditures associated with the delay in virus countermeasures. There are rumors that the ultimate price tag will be substantially higher, potentially making the Summer Olympics the costliest in history. It's difficult to calculate the cost of cancellation, especially because the Games only account for approximately 0.1% of Japan's GDP. Sponsors: Toyota TM, minus 0.87%, one of the main Olympic sponsors, said that it will no longer air Olympic-related TV advertisements in Japan, highlighting how divisive the Games have become in the country. Toyota will not be attending the opening ceremony, and the decision was taken based on a number of considerations, including the lack of spectators, a spokeswoman said. In Japan, we will not show any ads linked to the Games. In 2015, Toyota Motor Corporation agreed to a multi-year sponsorship arrangement with the International Olympic Committee for about $1 billion. Toyota's ad ban only applies to TV advertisements in Japan. It does not apply to commercials in other countries. Coca-Cola KO, minus 0.04%, Airbnb ABNB, plus 0.38%, Alibaba BABA, minus 1.19%, Visa V, minus 0.62%, Intel INTC, plus 0.04%, and General Electric GE, minus 2.56%, among other major Olympic sponsors, have made no public remarks on how they plan to promote during the Games. Toyota, Coca-Cola, Airbnb, Alibaba, Visa, Intel, and General Electric representatives did not reply to requests for comment on this article. The Associated Press. In an interview with the Associated Press, principal author Bent Flyvberg noted that the Tokyo cost overrun has already exceeded 200%. This is before the one-year delay caused by the COVID-19 epidemic adds several billion additional costs. Flyvberg identifies a number of causes for growing prices and cost overruns, as well as remedies for the IOC. Governments provide the great bulk of expenditures, with the IOC paying just a minor fraction. The Olympics present the highest degree of risk that a community can accept, Flyvberg told the Associated Press. We can't keep going in this direction. No community will want to do this, because it's just too costly, placing them in debt that most towns cannot afford. It's tough to keep track of Olympic expenditures since there's so much overlap and dispute. Politicians and organizers are always arguing about what constitutes and what does not constitute Olympic expenditures. Unfortunately, Olympic authorities and hosts frequently misinform regarding the expenses and cost overruns of the Games, says Flyvberg. As a result, we can't rely on organizers, the International Olympic Committee, or governments to give us with accurate information on the true costs, cost overruns, and cost risks associated with the Olympic Games. Flyvberg solely considers the expenses of running the Games, such as operational costs, and capital expenditures, such as the cost of building sporting stadiums. He ignores a third category, which is often far larger: road and airport renovations, as well as what he refers to as sprucing up projects, all of which belong to taxpayers. Olympic cost overruns were also discovered, although they were in line with comparable large-scale projects according to the report. They aren't, according to Flyvberg's research. Flyvberg stated that he has been in contact with the IOC on and off, and that he had sent a colleague to an IOC workshop. He claims that one of the primary causes of growing costs is because the IOC does not cover them. He also mentioned growing security expenses and the need to move the Games across the globe. He refers to this as the eternal beginner syndrome, in which fresh host cities are beginning from scratch. He claims that the IOC has recently attempted to cut expenditures, but that the effort is too little, too late. They, IOC, set the standards, but they don't pay for them, Flyvberg explained. It's like you and I giving the specifications for a house we're going to live in, but we don't have to pay for it. What do you think we'd spend our money on? We'd give it a gilded finish. This is how things have progressed throughout time. Flyvbjerg expressed excitement at the prospect of sitting down and speaking with IOC President Thomas Bach. He describes himself as an Olympic enthusiast. Well, because of COVID, Japan has spent about $800 billion on 3 stimulus packages. Obviously, dealing with the epidemic is the most expensive aspect of this situation. It isn't the Olympic Games. However, if the Olympics exacerbate the epidemic and fresh stimulus measures are required, the cost of those measures might be far greater than the Olympic budget. So, this is where the video will come to a close. Please subscribe to the channel and click the bell button to be alerted when fresh, spicy, and fascinating stuff is available. Also, tell your family and friends about it. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so please leave them in the box below. Stay safe. Take care.